Welcome to the Reboot Chronicles, your gateway to the world's most influential leaders who are rebooting their organizations and themselves to thrive in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean DeBias, CEO who's rebooted dozens of companies, creating billions in value. My passion is uncovering inspiring reboot stories. So buckle up, lean in, and please share this episode with a friend. It may help reboot their career and their life. I'd like to welcome modern-day revolutionary Henry Ajder to the Reboot Chronicles, one of the world's top experts on AI, deepfakes, and the evolving ethics of synthetic media. He founded Latent Space Advisory, leads the University of Cambridge's Generative AI and Business program, and named AI Power Player by Financial Times. He's the world's go-to advisor to the biggest AI companies and governments around the world on the immense challenges of trust in the AI age, deepfake risks to businesses, and how our synthetic future will continue to unfold across societies. His groundbreaking 2019 report, The State of Deepfakes, was the first to map real-world impact of generative technologies. I assume he's a Gil Scott-Heron fan based on his title of his widely acclaimed BBC series, The Future Will Be Synthesized, which shows how AI is transforming identity, creativity, and truth itself. Stick around until the end, where Henry's going to reveal how AI is going to impact you, your friends, and your family. Henry, good to see you.
Likewise, Dean. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, that intro could have gone on forever. You're quite the AI expert, and I have a lot of companies that we work with that need to talk to you. What everyone's probably wondering, what did Dean just say? What is synthetic future? What, Mike, should I be worried about this? What is that?
Well, in some respects, Dean, it's not actually a synthetic future. It's really now, in large part, a synthetic present. That is, we're talking about how AI, deepfakes, and generative technologies are fundamentally reshaping the landscape of our increasingly digital lives. So how are these tools and technologies being used without us knowing or with our knowledge to change the content we watch, whether that's a movie, whether that's a TV show, whether that's commercials, whether that's social media content, the photos that you take on your smartphone that you may think have no filter involved, all now use computational photography. AI is shaping the image you capture. Whether it's the language models that you're relying on now maybe to inform purchasing decisions you make, or indeed things baked into the Spotify algorithm, for example, that choose the songs that you listen to next in a sequence. The synthetic future is how are these technologies, which are already deeply embedded in our daily lives, only going to become more sophisticated, more ever-present, and critically harder to distinguish from what some people might call authentic experiences.
Yeah, as you know, we have a lot of business leaders that tune in, but just a lot of people too, and consumers. And if they knew what was really going on behind the scenes and how much information people have on them, I don't know if they'd throw away their phones, but they might be a little more cautious. But what should people be most concerned about here in the next few years?
Well, how long have you got, Dean? I'm not sure we've got time in the episode to cover.
I don't know why we keep this to a half-hour show. Darn it.
So I think there are a couple of key areas of concern. And these are things that, look, I'm no AI doomer. I want to be very clear. My work is really about mapping the impact, both positive and negative, of these technologies in a way that avoids speculation dressed up confidently as certainty. It's something that really frustrated me when I first started doing this work 8 years ago. And what I've tried to do is really inform without the kind of bluster, without the AI Zoom or AI Zoom dichotomy, what is going on, and how are we going to be navigating that moving forwards. But in terms of the threat landscape, there are a couple of areas I think are particularly concerning, especially for your listeners who are business leaders and people who are increasingly at risk of things like deepfake fraud, for example. So this is the ability of individuals now to create hyper-realistic synthetic voices, either with text to speech. So you type a sentence, it comes out in the other side as a speech file of that person saying those words, or speech to speech. This is when I could, for example, skin my voice as it sounds right now with, say, yours, Dean. So it preserves my vocal performance, as we call it, but actually I kind of wear your voice in my vocal performance. We are starting to see huge amounts of losses being incurred from the use of these technologies towards business leaders, for example, trying to get financial controllers to authorize payments of millions of dollars, posing as a CFO or a revenue officer. We're starting to see this being used in the context of impersonation to try and defame and kind of sabotage business relationships, client relationships. And critically, we're seeing it being used in limited senses at the moment, but increasingly in attempts to kind of do market manipulation to make it appear that someone important in a business might be saying something about, Q2 results being lower than expected to try and get a dip, which then artificially gets, bought up and then is corrected. But by the time it's corrected, the damage has been done.
Damage is done. Oof.
So yeah, that's one area that I think is really significant. I think another one, which is a bit more societally kind of broader, is fundamental trust in media, right? How do we know what is real or what is not anymore? And what does this mean for our ability to have meaningful discussion, right? To kind of be on the same page when talking about the world, whether that's in politics, whether that's in all these other areas of our lives.
Right.
And right now, fundamentally, Dean, it is a coin flip for you and basically anyone else in terms of spotting AI-generated content, whether that's voices, whether that's music, whether that's images, and indeed, of course, text generated by ChatGPT and other language models. So when we can't tell the difference, that's a real problem in certain contexts, right? Particularly ones where maybe if this is real, it really changes my view on a set of events or a person or a political party or things like this, right?
Right.
And right now, we just don't have the information available to everyday people to make that claim confidently. What that means is everyday people and journalists increasingly as well are basically saying, well, we just can't tell. We have no way of getting to the truth about what this piece of media is. And so people are getting frustrated. They're asking, for example, Grok on X, was Twitter, asking the chatbot there, hey, Grok, is this real? And that chatbot is not a detection tool, right? This is not digital Sherlock Holmes.
Grok's not real. How can he tell us? Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. But they're asking because they're exasperated. I'm trying to help governments navigate this at the moment is how do we try and build a secure layer for information in the deepfake and synthetic age?
Too much to unpack there. The thing that scared me the most about what you just said was voice to voice. So can that be live real time? So right now you are being interviewed. Could your voice be James Earl Jones or something live? So this is like Mission Impossible. I mean, they invented that technology. They put it on your throat, little peel away thing. Is it that good?
Exactly. I mean, we increasingly see our like sci-fi imaginations of tasks becoming real life, right? But so it's a great question because this really does affect the feasibility of these attacks. Now, I should say it's not all bad, right? I mean, for example, you mentioned there James Earl Jones of Star Wars. They use this technology to recreate Mark Hamill's voice when he was younger as young Luke Skywalker. Right. They skinned an actor's performance vocally with his voice.
Right.
And that was pretty cool, right? That was a pretty creative, interesting use case. But at the moment, there is still what we call latency, a delay, right? Between the audio being skinned with the other person's voice and actually then being outputted, right? Being actually shared with the other person on the Zoom call or on the end of the phone. So there is still some latency
with the live version, but the other one is probably highly accurate.
Oh, absolutely. When you're not talking about the live context, when you don't have to be as dynamic in response, it's pretty easy to spin up. And what's critical with this as well, Dean, right, is like a lot of people think these are tools that are like incredibly exclusive and hard to use and expensive, and it's just not the case anymore. We're talking about capabilities that Hollywood studios couldn't have dreamed of having access to 7 years ago, now on the phone in your pocket, on a laptop on your desk, often accessible via a URL or just a fairly cheap to use app or something like this. So the landscape of democratization of these tool sets has been incredibly dramatic.
Exactly. They've been crowdsourced, basically, and open source software. I will refrain from doing my James Earl Jones imitation. I'm pretty good at it, actually. But so what do you advise some of the big dog companies in the world, including the people that are inventing and driving AI? So that's different from, advising like, ExxonMobil. You're advising the people who are actually creating this. How do you help them? How do you guide them?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the bigger kind of tech and AI companies that I work with are building products at an incredibly fast pace, right? You'll have been aware, no doubt, of this kind of AI arms race dynamic that we're starting to see where the big companies are constantly trying to one-up each other and sort of maintain leadership in this race. And what that means is there are a lot of companies that are building incredibly powerful tool sets for doing things like creating generative video, like OpenAI's Sora 2 that came out last week, or, creating, again, entirely new voices or cloning voices in seconds. And I try and help these organizations understand what are the policies and measures they can take to make sure that they release these tools, yes, at a commercially advantageous speed, but also whilst preserving some kind of safety, some kind of transparency, and critically maintaining trust with users,
Right.
Which I think is one of the most important challenges and currencies of this kind of new age of AI is trust. And so I will help them understand the landscape in terms of what we are starting to see from competitors, what we're starting to see from some of the open source projects in the space, and also how legislation from other countries might, for example, shape the way that tool or product could be used in different jurisdictions, different regions. But ultimately, I'm trying to help them get to a point where they can release a tool which is thoughtfully designed and thoughtfully deployed, right? It's not something where it's being, clumsily executed on and leading to lots of horrible, unforeseen consequences, although inevitably some happen. But trying to get it to a point where it's ready for everyday people to use, and it's not going to contain as many, hopefully, nasty surprises as it would have done if it wasn't developed in a thoughtful manner.
Right. I advise the National Science Foundation for the United States and across the administration. It's been doing it for years. And all this next-gen technology coming out of universities. But I don't really dive into too much. It's like, how do I guide the government? So what are you telling governments to do about how this could impact their society and whether or not they can do anything about it is my question.
It's such a good question, Dean, because fundamentally, I think a lot of governments, even though they won't say it, are completely underwater when it comes to trying to understand and navigate this technology with the space.
Big time.
With the speed it's moving. Yeah, I mean,
we're talking underwater. He's talking like at the bottom of the ocean right now.
Yeah, like the Mariana Trench or whatever it's called.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You need James Cameron to go find the government at this point. A lot of the governments I work with, particularly based out of kind of the UK, European Commission, European Union kind of framing, there is a difficulty of understanding the country's role in this new kind of AI dynamic. And I think there's no secret, right, that the two countries that are seen as the real big players and shapers in this space are the US and China.
Right.
So it's trying to help countries understand, well, what can we meaningfully do with the power that we have to basically better understand and resist the knee jerk that some countries have taken with regards to AI generated content and tool sets. Resist that knee jerk, properly understand the impact, right? Properly understand how this is impacting civilians, how this is impacting businesses. And from there, take steps which aren't deluded about the impact they're going to have. If you're talking about horrendous crimes like creating AI-generated abuse materials of women using explicit content, You're never, unfortunately, going to be able to stop that entirely now. That is out there in the world. The Pandora's box has been opened. But what we can do is do things like introduce strategic points of friction via policy, both with a carrot, i.e. encouraging businesses with incentives, or with a stick, disencouraging, encouraging people with threats or with punishments to basically move to a place where it's much harder for bad actors to, for example, misuse these tools, whilst also trying to encourage that positive and responsible development of the technology at the same time. So there's a lot of tightrope walking. I call it kind of like the innovation tightrope. But it really does depend on the country. And that's what's fascinating, Dean, is the kind of patchwork approach we're seeing globally emerge as different countries take different strategic approaches based on what they see their strengths are, maybe with their native industries, or maybe their positioning relative to their neighbors or to other players. And
whether they have a pro-business agenda or not. So if you look at our country, previous administrations, they had an AI more of a defensive posture along with some of the European countries, a consortium. Whereas now, these days, looking at the second half of this decade, it's more of a business opportunistic view of it. Glass half empty, glass half full. We're hosting the president of Estonia and about 20 of their startups in Chicago in a couple of weeks here, and it's very much pro. It's pro AI growth of the. So it's all about growth of the industry, growth of the country, and the ripple effect. But as a policymaker, you're on a tightrope there. So I hope you're helping them.
I'm trying my best. And I think you're spot on, Dean. I mean, I was at an event in London a couple of weeks back when Trump's state visit was taking place. And the event was hosted by Jensen Huang of NVIDIA, alongside our Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and then Trump's Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick. And he said exactly what you just said, which is, we aren't wanting to take a fear-first approach. And, it's very pro-innovation, pro-building, pro-accelerating the processes. And I think, as always, it's kind of a middle path. I still think that there is obviously important work to be done around safety, around trying to make these tools secure. I think that's the term that's now more popular than safety, which I can understand. But it's just it is about that balance. And I guess one of my concerns is that with the kind of arms race sort of dynamic that we are seeing emerge, my concern is that we might go a bit too far in a correction from caution to overzealousness. And so, as always, kind of the pendulum swing needs to kind of come back to the middle at some point.
Yeah, the consulting industry is counting on it. They love it. I'm talking about the big dogs. We make fun of them, but we've had many of them on the program. What's a deep fake photographer?
So I talk about my work as doing cartography, right? Which is someone who makes maps. Historically, you'd have had a sextant and you'd have had a compass, and you'd have gone around kind of mapping out different landscapes. I'm luckily not doing that, particularly given the weather here right now. I'm glad to be inside and warm. But the reason I refer to it in this way, Dean, is because my work over these last 8 years or so, my motivation for it was everyone's talking about these technologies that are supposedly having this impact or that impact. Some people are saying they've already swung elections in some countries. Some people are already saying that tools for detecting it are working 100% accuracy. Some people are saying that, you won't need to use entry-level employees at all in your workplace anymore because AI can do it all for you. It's what I said earlier, a lot of speculation dressed up confidently as certainty. And that really frustrated me because I was like, well, okay, what's actually going on? So my role as a kind of an AI deepfake synthetic media cartographer is to map this landscape as it is, right? Not how people think it could be, but as it is, to ground strategy for businesses, commercial strategy, to understand what they're truly competing against, what is actually working, what is actually failing.
Right.
And for people in policymaking and in the general public, just get a better sense of where we are. Because you will no doubt know, like, the frothy, hype-filled nature of the space right now is reaching kind of fever pitch. And it's exhausting and it's frustrating.
It's exhausting. Just go on LinkedIn and everyone's an expert too. But you dressed up as credible.
Last month they were a crypto expert, and the month before that it was a metaverse expert.
We didn't have any of those on the program. We made fun of them. But dressed up as credible it's a big thing right now. It's like you need to be worried about. I mean, most corporate boards. I guess two places I was going to go is like besides scaling companies and running companies, I advise a lot of big corporate boards on what to do. And we used to be cybersecurity. They think they have it under control. That never changes because it's a constant threat. But they are struggling with this because you can't hire one person that's going to be in charge of your chief AI officer, whatever the heck it is. These large corporations are struggling with, hey, we could get our lunch eaten. We need to use this as an opportunistic way to grow our revenues. And others are saying, we need to use it to be more efficient. There's a group in the middle that no one talks about, which is, oh my gosh, we don't know what to do because of what you just said. Is it too early? Is it too late? Are we not? And they're kind of in a this cautious mode. What's your advice to the big dogs of the industry?
Yeah, so I mean, I work a lot with the AI companies and with governments, but I also do spend a lot of time speaking with, I guess, more traditional commercial,
these are companies. Traditional commercial, but big. So they're risk averse, basically. Unless there's tens of billions of dollars on the line, then they'll go for it.
Yes, and typically move at a glacial pace as well, I think, which is
that's a nice word.
Yes, and it often takes a while for information to kind of trickle down. And, as you mentioned, I mean, a lot of places went for a chief AI officer in the same vein that I think a lot of places went for like a chief metaverse officer.
They did, yes.
Without really knowing what that means or what that's meant to satisfy or to actually do in the organization. And I think a lot of it is as much messaging to shareholders or to others that, we're not sleeping on this, right? We've got someone on it. But actually, a lot of the time, that person is enthusiastic. They're an evangelist for the technology, But in terms of being able to meaningfully build out strategy that's got longevity and is like robust, right? That's actually going to stand the test of time. I have not seen a huge amount in my experience that I've been really kind of blown away by or felt has really been good.
No, and
the hype.
if you are blown away, that whoever was running it just got recruited to whatever Microsoft.
Yeah,
they're gone.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, that's it.
By the way, you just said I put my best man on it. Sounds like the greenskeeper in Caddyshack. I put my best man on it. Like, did you really?
Yeah, you sure about that?
Sure about that?
No, for sure.
It looked like Bill Murray to me. Whatever.
I mean, it is kind of funny in some respects.
Yeah, you got to have a little humor here because it's just gonna blow up in your. I mean, every day it's going to. I think much bigger than cybersecurity. For instance, we've had a couple of these AI clone companies on the program, and it didn't work real well. Jittery and all that stuff. Like you point out, you can spot a deep fake. Most of us could, but
I'm going to push back on that. Dude.
You're advising one of those companies. I'm working with one of those companies. In other words, the deep fake thing. They're doing it on purpose so people can clone themselves. Is that even a good idea?
Yeah, so I'm just going to quickly push back on this idea that I can, really spot a deep fake.
Well, I would call you if I had a question. Let me put it that way.
I mean, I get a lot of outreach from journalists, Dean. I get a lot of big outfits that you all know reaching out and saying, "Hey, we are trying to authenticate this piece of media. Can you help us?"
Oh.
And I have a better sense than 99% of people about that, but I do not have categorical confidence in many cases to say this is definitely fake, that will then go and inform how one of the biggest news platforms in the world might then go and report that story, right? There's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, they can't pay you a big enough fee to certify that.
Oh my, well, the big enough fee, the biggest fee I've got from them is a zero, right? Journalism. But it's a duty. It's something I do because I think it's important.
Yeah,
and I want to, I think it's as a democratic duty to kind of like, democracy is to try and help with these situations. But
if you can't tell, that doesn't make me feel good at all.
Well, I mean, we can maybe move on. We can touch on some of the kind of the solution approaches in a moment, perhaps. But to your question around avatars, so interesting. You mentioned you work with one of the companies kind of pushing this forward. I work for or I advise Synthesia, which is UK based.
That's a good one.
Scale up now.
Yep.
Yeah. Really the pioneers of this. Now saying about $4 billion valuation. So they've really done very well out of it. And I think the way that Victor, their CEO, talked about it, I find really interesting, which is we're moving into a video first world where people don't read as much. They want to engage with content more through audio visual. And if you have an avatar doing your training session as opposed to having to read a manual, or maybe even you have avatars being used to deliver messages in different languages to your colleagues in other parts of the world, these are meaningful forms of engagement, which aren't meant to be deceptive, right? They're not trying to make people think they're real. They are new forms of kind of more direct communication and more hyper-personalized communication. Having said that, there have been cases where these tools have been misused and almost certainly will continue to be. So we're talking about, for example, people using AI-generated news anchors to spread propaganda in Venezuela, or people using these tools to clone someone else's likeness, not their own, bypassing the authentication measures on the tools to then kind of puppeteer someone's likeness.
Right.
Something we've seen recently with Sora 2 from OpenAI, right? It's a lot of videos of people like Stephen Hawking, for example, in a race car or, in a wrestling match and stuff, people kind of just taking someone's likeness and using it in that way. So there is concern about it, but I think it's the future of a lot of communication, Dean, is why would I want to read this when I can have you read it to me?
So if you look, I'll pick 5 years out, but I wanted to say 10. How is all of this, not just AI, whatever next word we're going to invent to move the industry along, let's just come up with a new one here on the show. How is that going to reboot the way we work and live and play and hopefully play? But yeah,
you're asking
what's going to look like 5-10 years from now?
You're laying me a trap, Dean, because predictions are a fool's game in this
We're going to play this back over and over again.
This will haunt me.
You could take the glass half full. Fine with me.
Yeah. I mean, look, I like to try and get a balance between different views on this, as mentioned. And I do try to avoid predictions because I often talk about doing this cartography work, right? Making maps, but it feels like doing at the moment cartography in a sandstorm. The landscape is moving so quickly, right? That your maps out of date very quickly. And you're constantly having to work on it. Yeah. So, but I mean, I think in like a 5 to 10 year horizon, I mean, I should say, I thought that we were not going to see anywhere near the amount of progress that we have seen today, up to today, until 2030, right? So I was already wrong.
It kind of went like this and then boom. Just
like
big up and to the right curve, for those of you not on the video.
Exactly. I mean, it was exponential in the figurative sense of exponential, i.e., it was more than exponential. It was more than that, doubling the speed that we saw. But what do I think is going to change? Well, I think fundamentally we're going to have to rethink digital infrastructure for this new age of AI-generated content, which is to come back to what you were saying about being able to spot deepfakes or AI-generated content full stop. You can't. I actually actively discourage your audience from trying to be digital sleuths, because you may think that you know how, but I guarantee you don't. The signs of manipulated media or AI-generated media are changing all the time. You might read something that says, oh, just look for XYZ and you'll be able to spot them. But by the time you've read it, there's a new model that's been created that can probably generate content without those XYZ factors involved. So what I think we need is something that we call digital kind of nutrition labels. That's the colloquial term for what was really called cryptographic content provenance. What this means is that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
It is. It's not exactly. Well, as I say, that's why you read the nutrition label, Dean. But
darn it, forgot to do that.
Yeah. The simple version of this is there is a technical standard akin to something like PDF, an open standard anyone can use, anyone can develop with, which provides a secure means of attaching metadata, which is the data that explains how a piece of media has been created, what device it was captured on. And it secures it with a standard which can then surface on certain platforms. So it can come up on your social media platforms. It could come up in your phone library app, photo library app, sorry. And what this does is it provides a kind of a transparency about media. It doesn't tell you whether the media is truthful. It doesn't tell you what to believe. It just gives you the information you need to make a decision about a piece of content. So you might have a photo that looks really hyper-realistic, and then you see that someone's actually changed the background in terms of the saturation of the sunset colors, right? And maybe you think, oh, okay, maybe that sunset wasn't as amazing as this looked, right? It just gives people context. It gives them more information. So I think new digital infrastructure like that is going to be essential. I think the other thing you mentioned, Dean, was around cybersecurity earlier. Yep. And I think that what we're going to see is deepfake like a deepfake antivirus style product increasingly being interwoven into business practice.
That'd be good.
And there's one organization that I work with who I think, are the leaders really in this space, or certainly some of the best, is called Get Real Security. And they work on providing what they call a protect function. So it's got a persistent monitoring of all of your communications on, web calls and telephone and stuff like this, that then gives you flags if suspicious activity is identified, right, and helps you understand how that person might have spread throughout your organization and things like this. So I think we're going to see, and we already are from other established players like McAfee, like Norton, trying to basically create a new approach to when cybersecurity isn't just about kind of hacking machines. It's also about hacking humans beyond just a standard phishing email.
Yep.
It's about fooling people by replicating a knowing smile, right? The sound of someone's voice, which is sinister, very important.
So in the future, I'll have that module running right now, and we could detect right now whether I'm even talking to you. This could all be nonsense.
Precisely.
I think you're in the Caymans on a vacation or something right now.
I wish.
You left your AI on for me. I appreciate it.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Dean, because that was actually something that the CEO of Zoom last year said he saw as the future of Zoom, was that he said, I can go to the beach in California whilst my avatar takes the meetings that aren't as important to me. Which I think is actually another interesting point that I will kind of,
I think the stock went down after that or whatever.
Well, I think his idea is it's going to help it go up because it shows scalability of the product. But I think this is exactly it. I think you kind of hit the nail there.
Plug-in modules.
I really think, Dean, we're going to see pushback. And I think we are going to see society, not everyone, maybe not most people, but you're going to see a notable portion of people saying, I don't like this. This does not feel authentic. This does not feel like meaningful, true communication between humans. And I think you're going to see backlash and pushback against uses of AI, which people don't think are in line with a brand's values or with the products and services that they provide. We're already starting to see some people kind of saying, why the hell have you kind of put AI into this product? It didn't need it. You're just putting it there.
Didn't
for the
need
sake
it.
of
Exactly. We, one of the companies I'm chairman of, one of our customers, big dog corporate guy, of course, asked us to get AI insurance. And I said, no. He said, Lloyd's of London probably has it. I'm like, I'm not doing that. It's a false sense of security, but it's probably an industry we should invest in, that kind of.
I certainly think with a lot of hype and excitement around AI agents, which I think is overblown right now. But if you want to set an AI off with a complex set of tools to do open-ended tasks, you better have some insurance, because the buck doesn't stop with AI.
No,
it stops with the person who's ultimately running it.
Exactly, it comes back up to you. And by the time that agent has talked to another agent, and they moved on, they bought a house, and who knows what's going on.
Indeed.
You and I both have been teaching AI for years. I've been doing it at Kellogg Northwestern. Back to the whole, predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics. And I would always show them a roadmap of where it was going. I had no idea of the curve that we were going to hit here in the Roaring 20s. What's going on? You're teaching Cambridge business students. How are you grooming the next generation of leaders to handle this stuff, or to just actually thrive with it?
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good question. I mean,
I try.
One of the things I really notice is people of different generations approaching the use of AI in very different ways, which is not surprising, but it's still very interesting. So one of the things I really see with younger people that I lecture to, for example, is a lot of them talk about using AI close as what I would class as almost an operating system, rather than a discrete tool that they go to do specific tasks. It becomes the kind of the legend that they use on their map, right, to navigate their life. Everything starts with the language model. AI is seen as the kind of the first point of contact with a system, not booting up your browser and entering your password or something like this, right? So that's really fascinating to me. And I think that comes with both promise and trepidation, right? Which is,
right.
I've also seen a lot of young people using AI in ways that I find disturbing. So one, for example, is I know someone who I won't name, but they have a sister who will not leave the house on a night out in an outfit unless ChatGPT has rated her outfit an 8 out of 10 or higher, right? And so this kind of thing for me is quite insidious. It's kind of an over-reliance or an overestimation of the opinion and the authority of these models in critical decision-making context, right? It's like an outsourcing.
Great example. It's a great example, though. Yeah, because that could ripple through anything. Yep.
Exactly. So the kind of the AI first generations, or certainly some of the most AI literate generations being the younger generations, I still have to kind of, I guess, try and encourage a more thoughtful balance and approach to use of these tools in different contexts, and understanding where this is perhaps going to be something which oversteps a line into what maybe is something that you should be owning yourself as a decision, or this is a piece of work that is really important for you to do as you, maybe using AI as kind of an interlocutor, right, as a conversation partner, but not as the kind of the model that sort of becomes the tail wagging the dog, right?
Yeah, you're the authority, not them. But no, it's a good one, Henry. Thanks. We want to thank you for joining us today too. Just before we go out, speaking of sisters, I come from a big family. What should my brothers and sisters be worried about here? How do they protect themselves?
I love that question, because I think it's really important to remember that the people who will be most impacted by these technologies are just everyday people, right? It's, it is something which is about everyone. This isn't just for the boardroom. This isn't just for the Parliament and in the UK, the ministers to discuss. This is about real people being impacted. I think one thing I would say is try and remain curious. I don't think that we should be treating these tools as inherently scary or terrifying. I think curiosity and experimentation are good practices, but also I can't sugarcoat this new landscape in terms of not being able to trust what you see and hear anymore as you used to be able to, perhaps. And I think it's important that we encourage a vigilance towards kind of this new era of AI generated content when you're thinking about what political things might be happening, or is that video of this politician saying something that I find outrageous really actually true? So I would encourage that vigilance. What we need to work on as a society, what the government, what tech companies, all of these organizations have as a responsibility to your brothers, your sisters, whoever it might be, is we need to build the infrastructure so that they can navigate their way out of that skepticism, and they're not just left in the dark, shrugging their shoulders saying, I have no idea what's real or not, and I have no way to know, so I'm going to go with my gut. That's a bad situation.
Yeah, well said. Thanks, Henry. Appreciate you coming on the program today.
Thanks so much, Dean. No, it's my pleasure.
You got it. You've been listening to Henry Ajder. This is Dean Tobias with the Reboot Chronicles. Hope you listen, subscribe, and join us wherever you get podcasts or at rebootchronicles.com.